Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene. This is episode 311. Today's date is April 12, 2022. Hostage-NATO, including a U.S. Lieutenant General, we believe. A new information about MH370 and May. So some of my sources are Nick Veniamin interviewed Michael Jaco, Truth Seekers 88 with Mike Penny, God, the Bible, and Patriot subscribers. Regis Tremblay interviewed Scott Ritter, Alexander Christofouou, Alex Christofouou, Alexander Mercouris. They're two new sources I have in Greece. Judy, Byington, Dr. William Mount, Suspicious Observers, World News Report, and others. Gonzalo Lira, also an interview with Scott Ritter. So let's get started. I'd like to say thanks, like, subscribe, and share. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. And I'd like to say thanks to all my Patriot subscribers for words of encouragement and support for my channel. And I'd like to say welcome to all 50 states, including Alaska, Hawaii, the First Nations, Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi, Chickasaw, Mohawk, Apache, First Nation Pit River in California, Mohegans, Yakama Nation in Washington State, Potawatomi in the Midwest in Oklahoma, Ojibwe Nation in northern Minnesota, a proud people who want peace and justice, Choctaw, Abenaki Tribe, Cheyenne, Massanutten, Pequot, Blackfoot in Montana, Spokane, and Colville. And we say welcome. And we say welcome to the nations of Canada, England, France, Ireland, Philippines, South Africa, Netherlands, also called Holland, Indonesia, Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, New Zealand, Maldives, Nepal, Norway, Australia, Chile, Thailand, Belgium, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Panama, Guam, U.S. territory, Jamaica, Icelander living in Spain and other people in Spain, Wales in the UK, Sweden, Italy, Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, Romania, Bermuda, Bahamas, British territories, Morocco, Argentina, Northern Marianas Island, a U.S. territory located close to Australia and New Zealand, Denmark, Bolivia, Uganda, Iceland, Serbia, Bulgaria, Mauritius, a small island nation off of Africa, and the newest, Ukraine, the Czech Republic, Poland, Costa Rica, and now Malta. And we say welcome. So let's get started. Okay. We have heard and we have been talking about the war that's going on in Ukraine. And it's a real war, and real people are dying every day, civilians and soldiers. So now, let me draw you a map so we can look again at the different locations. So here's Russia. This is Ukraine. In this area we have Luhansk, Donetsk. This makes up the Donbass area, and these two areas have been recognized as independent republics by Russia. So we have Kharkiv, and I believe this is where Gonzalo Lira is broadcasting from. We have the front line, and we've got some locations here. 1, 2, 3. So we've got, this one is Kramatorsk. This one is Slavansk. And this one is Izium. And this Izium location there's quite a bit of news about it. It's a key point on the front line. Okay. In this area, we have Crimea. This is where the location from which Regis Tremblay, an American expat who worked for the Russian government and has retired, transmits. This is Odessa. And right here we have Mariupol. All right. And this is the Sea of Azov. We have up here Chernobyl, Kiev, that's the capital city of Ukraine. Okay, so now we can see where we have things going on. And along this front line, we understand that they're somewhere around Russian numbers, maybe 100,000. But we also have from Donbass, we have the Donbass People's Republic military, and that's about 50,000. And now we understand the Ukraine, Azov, NATO plus in this area is 60 to 90,000. And we understand that a plan by Russia is for Russia to divide their forces. That'll be Russia, the Donbass People's Republic, to put their resources into two groups, and that then to push against this Ukrainian front line from two directions, coming from the west and coming from the east. Now, Scott Ritter, a Marine military analyst with decades of experience, believes that Ukraine has had 8 years during which they have been slaughtering the Ukrainian citizens living in this area because they've been actively pursuing a program of genocide, hitting these people because they speak Russian and they are ethnically Slavic people. So this has been going on for 8 years. Scott Ritter believes they're well fortified and that they possibly could hold out for weeks in this, even though Russia has effectively cut off resupply, refuel, no troops can get in there. So that's going on. So I think it's important, and we're going to be hearing a lot about Izium, Slovatsk, Kramatorsk. It's right here along the front line. So, all right. Now we have some idea of numbers and location. So, Alexander Christofouou, a Greek journalist, on April 11 is saying that Russia has effectively blown up. They've blown up weapons coming from Poland. Now, we heard that report a few days ago that Poland was going to send in some 1980s to 90s 300 system missiles. Now, I found it curious when it was well known that Russia was in control of the land, the sea, and the air. So what was going to be their trip to get this in? Well, they go from Poland into Ukraine, and when they got about to the point of Tremblay, that would be from Poland inside Ukraine, maybe a couple of 100 miles. Well then, Russia, of course, blew up these missiles coming in to fortify their enemy. Yeah, Sun Tzu, Art of War, classic warfare. All right. And Alexander Christofouou is saying that NATO is trying to fast track getting some nations into NATO, like Finland and maybe Sweden, by October or January. So that would be pretty fast track. But I believe that after this go-to in Ukraine with the Russian army, that the NATO, the old NATO, now there's a new NATO that's being put together by President Trump, the alliance, President Putin, Chairman Xi, Prime Minister Modi, and up to 38 military governments are putting together a new NATO. But I believe that Alexander is referring to the old NATO. Okay. So now, Regis Tremblay, an American expat living in Crimea, has interviewed Scott Ritter, and Scott was also interviewed by Gonzalo Lira, an expat American broadcasting from Cardiff. All right. So now, he's talking about the mainstream media, disinfo. I mean, they're leading people to believe that Russia is losing the war. So that's not going to work out well. All right, now, here are three stories that have been put out. Recently, Zelensky in Kiev had a person in, and they were doing an interview, and he was showing body bags. And supposedly these were killed by Russia on March 19, and the interview was on April 2nd. Now, this would lead us to believe that Ukraine is a nation bereft of typical cultural and religious methods of working with dead bodies. That's one, but number two, when I reviewed what about the bodies being inside the bags, because what I remembered was there's going to be a lot of gases dispelled from human bodies inside body bag. Yep. And in a few days, they would be 2 times plus. And what we saw were little body bags that didn't appear to be bloated or expanded. I submit to you props. Now, this is a good point. Zelensky, who used to be an actor until the shadow U.S. CIA put him in as a president of Ukraine in a coup against the democratically elected president of Ukraine. It was about 2014. Zelensky was an actor. Well, it's been brought out by these 2 journalists in Greece, Christofouou and Mercouris, that he brought along with him his entire group he was working with on TV. And now his production group is part of, these are his assistants and his advisors. So they can set everything up and get the props in, and he looks good on TV. After all, he is an actor. So that's one of the stories. Here's another one. That there was a rail situation inside Ukraine, and that the Russians had fired missiles and killed 50 Ukrainian civilians. Scott Ritter says he believes it was a Torchka U missile, and he believes it was simply a misfire by Ukraine. He believes they were going past this rail station to fire somewhere in the Donbass, and that the missile just fell short and killed these civilians. Now here's another story. This is the one, it's in an area called Bukta. And this was also a situation where 50 people were killed. Scott Ritter says they were murdered by the Ukrainian National Police, who were simply doing an ethnic cleansing of the people at that location. So, and blaming Russia. Now, Regis Tremblay, an expat living in Crimea, interviewed Scott Ritter, the Marine military analyst, talking about Izium. It's on the front line. It's where the heavy fighting is happening. Some numbers he's giving. Ukraine, he's saying 50 to 100,000 on that front line. And he's saying Russia is going to use tank units. And what they're going to do is come from two directions to that front line to divide the Ukrainian soldier units. Now in Mariupol, at the steel mill, we've been talking about for the past few days, there are some important NATO commanders and there. Also, this is new information. The Ukraine Marines, another unit, plus the Azov are there. And Ukraine has been sending helicopters in on suicide missions to rescue someone at Mariupol. This has been going on April 1, and it's still going on. And the Russians have intercepted comms coming from that location of individuals speaking in American English and British English, German, French, Swedish, Polish, and Dutch. So those are some of the NATO nations that are tied down in Mariupol. Now, Alexander Mercouris, one of the Greek journalists. Okay. He's giving some numbers for Russia at 150. And I believe from Scott Ritter, that would be the top number. And from the Donbass People's Republic military, 50,000. And we now understand Russia has their National Guard now active in Ukraine. And what they do, they go into secure locations that have already been captured. But he's bringing this out that the Russian National Guard is actively engaged in the fighting that we understand in Mariupol, that we understand is being led by the Czech Special Forces. Now, in Mariupol, they tried to evacuate, suicide missions to evacuate the NATO commanders. They've used helicopters. They've used a ship. Now we have information coming out from multiple sources that they believe in Mariupol, inside that steel mill, is 3,000 to 5,000 Ukraine, Azov, and NATO personnel. So I think it's important to know what are your numbers. It goes along with basic military doctrine. What are the numbers? Okay, now here's some new information. This is from Alexander Christofouou, Greek journalist. We heard in the last couple of days, here's Mariupol, and it's a port city, that a ship tried to get in to this area. What was initially reported by Alexander was what the ship was transmitting. I am the maniac. I'm coming to get you. But now Alexander says there's been, it's come out that was a mistranslation of the word manak. And it's actually what the ship was transmitting is, I am the lighthouse. I'm coming to get you. Now, also new information coming out is that along the beach, there were Azov soldiers with lanterns. Okay, we're over here. So that's coming out. Now, also in Ukraine, flags are being raised by Russia and by the Donbass People's Republic. And they're being raised in Mariupol, Odessa, and other locations. Russia and the Donbass People's Republic military is in 98% control of the residential areas of Mariupol. So that's going on. Now, Alexander Christofouou and Alex Christofouou and Alexander Mercouris, two Greek journalists, are reporting NATO is in a panic. And that, yes, these meetings have been going on. Now, we learned about Minsk, a Minsk plan. This happened in 2015 in Ukraine. Russia and the Donbass People's Republic were fighting against the genocide that was going on in Ukraine against Ukrainian citizens Slavic Russians. So, in 2015 then, there was a battle, and this is 2015. Did you know NATO was also fighting in Ukraine in 2015, including the shadow U.S. military engaged in a genocide against the Russian-speaking Slavic people? Did you know that? NATO was there. How many? Thousands were there. So, in 2015, then Angela Merkel, alleged to be the daughter of the leader of Germany in World War II, went to Moscow and met with President Putin, and they came out with an agreement called the Minsk Agreement. And it was designed to let NATO have a corridor and retreat. And in 2015, President Putin agreed to that. Sun Tzu, Art of War. Know where you are in a campaign. So, and now in a meeting in Moscow, just yesterday, April 11, there was a meeting with the Austrian Chancellor Nehammer, who went to Moscow, presumably to ask for another Minsk-like agreement to let the NATO people go from Mariupol, and also to delay paying Russia in rubles for oil and gas for a year to a year and a half. Now, today on April 12th, it's reported Russia said no to any additional Minsk agreement. They're not letting the NATO people go from Mariupol. Sun Tzu, Art of War. Know where you are in your campaigns. All right. And Russia has no change. They're, to all nations, going to require payment for oil and gas in rubles. And in Austria, a country that gets 80% of its energy from Russia, they're going to have to decide, do we continue as a nation or do we pay Russia in rubles for oil and gas? Okay. Now another report is coming out about Mariupol. So here we go. Mariupol, a port city. This is where the NATO commanders, including, according to multiple sources, including Jean Decode, a Lieutenant General Roger Clothier, all right, are held in Mariupol. Now it comes out that Azov is holding the NATO commanders as hostages because they've lost faith in the government of Zelensky. So the Azov, a quasi-military civilian group actively practicing the philosophy from World War II Germany, is now holding the NATO commanders as hostages. And, Scott Ritter is estimating the number of Azov plus at the steel mill as 3,000 to 5,000. Now, in Mariupol, this is coming from the Greek journalist. There's a rumor of a coup for Ukraine in Kiev. And the Azov group believes that the government in Kiev has betrayed them and that that Kiev, the government, the Ukraine government, believes that the Azov plus in Mariupol are going to be defeated, as is the Ukrainian front line of Donbass. That Ukraine is not going to interfere or engage in a surrender activity. They're going instead to let thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians and this Azov group and the NATO commanders in Mariupol and along the front line in Donbass to be taken and neutralized by Russia. And Boris Johnson from England paid a visit to Zelensky yesterday or the day before in Kiev and told Zelensky the orders from the shadow Washington, shadow military and shadow CIA and the shadow NATO is no surrender. You let the Azov and the NATO and the Ukrainian soldiers just they're on their own. All right. Now, right. And so what the Azov is saying is that Kiev is avoiding their calls, that they have abandoned the Azov and they realize it and help is not coming. They've been betrayed. And I would likely believe this is when Azov decided to hold the NATO commanders as hostages. All right. And I believe the Azov took the NATO commanders as hostages when they recognized their situation, and when that ship was coming in, it was the Azov commanders that were down there to be rescued, not the NATO, because they are holding them as hostages. Okay, so we have some numbers. In Izium, that's along the Donbass front line, 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers at Kramatorsk. And Zelensky says this is the last stand. Now, Scott Ritter is coming out with that this is called a steel Basque fist. And it's classic military doctrine. You know, you have the front line, but you've divided your people and resources, and you're going to come in from two different directions. Now, Scott believes that the Ukraine along the front line have 60,000 soldiers plus, and that they're well fortified and they could fight for weeks. Just like Mariupol has gone on for weeks because they've been putting in fortifications and supplies for years. Now, the intel is that the shadow U.S. military and the shadow U.S. government has said to Zelensky to fight until all Ukrainian military and the Azov and the NATO, whoever is there, has been neutralized. No surrender. Now, this is news that's coming out by Scott Ritter. Russia has activated 60,000 National Guard. 60,000, they already have National Guard there. They've activated 60,000 reserves. So Russia has activated an additional type of soldiers, military. They have their regular units there. They had National Guard there. Now they've activated reserves. And their job is to come in and maintain areas that have been taken by the frontline military. Scott Ritter is estimating that the Donbass front line and the situation in Mariupol are only going to last about 1 to 2 more weeks. And then Russia, that will be the finishing of phase 2 for Russia. And then phase 3 for Russia. They will move west to Kiev plus across Ukraine. Now, some more information about the NATO hostages. And we know from previous, we have multiple sources, including Gene Decode, that Lieutenant General Roger Clothier, who is the commander of NATO land forces, is being held hostage in Mariupol, along with French, Turkey, Holland, Germany, English, that's the England forces, America, and Swedish, and possibly Polish, are being held hostage by the Azov. And now we learn new information that the Azov had trained in Canada, okayed by JT, the supposed leader of Canada, and reported by Radio Canada. Now, we have this new on April 12th. Russia has liquidated, yeah, that was an Azov leader. There was another group. Here's the Azov. So they had another group that was supposedly coming in to help rescue them, called the Right Sector. And that Russia has liquidated the leader of this group, Obanusk, and that happened in Izium yesterday on April 11. So yeah, they were coming in to try and get some of the Azov people out, but they were taken out. Okay, now Russia, here's some more information about the Donbass People's Republic, about flags, and they're being raised over Donbass, Mariupol, and Odessa. Azov holds hostage NATO commanders, including U.S. Lieutenant General Roger Clothier. And they have NATO people there from United States, England, Turkey, Sweden, Holland, France, Germany, plus. Okay. And we have this coming out from Israeli News Live, Stephen Ben-Nun, formerly with the CIA, now as a ministry, but regularly gets information from the Pentagon, that via Dabu 77, there's been a buildup of NATO along the Russian border. He doesn't name here's Ukraine. It's not Belarus because that's part of Russia. So right here we have Poland, we have Romania. So somewhere along this area, it's being reported that NATO has put 80,000 troops on the border. So that's going on. So that concludes our news part for today. Now we'll move on to sci-fi. Now, so I have multiple sources for this. Jean-Claude, Penny Kelly, Israeli News Live, Dr. William Mount, this new group, Maverick Star Reloaded. They have a lot of information about the pole shift, suspicious observers. So I've got multiple, World News Report. Yeah, I've got multiple sources. All right. So now this is talking about the poles shifting. Now this was my area, Life Earth Science was my area in college, and I was particularly interested in the electromagnetic and the poles of the Earth. So I had learned, and I went to college in the 90s, so I learned that the electromagnetic strength was going down, I think something like 5%, maybe every year or two. I know I had a Patriot subscriber said, well, we would be out of that by now. Well, there's been a report to that effect. So, at any rate, the electromagnetic shields inside the Earth, we have a dynamo. It generates an electric field and then a magnetic, so it's a dynamo. It continues itself. Out of this, we have electromagnetic energy that comes out of the poles. And this electromagnetic energy then forms around the Earth a shield that protects us from energy from the sun and asteroids and other things. Okay, that's been weakening. I tested that's been well known in the science community for many decades. Okay. So now what this news source is, Maverick Star Reloaded. This came from Penny Kelly as a source. And I looked at his site, and I would have to say, I would take that with a grain of salt. He may be putting forth some science. He's also putting forth a philosophy, which I don't attest to. Yeah, it's doom and gloom, and this is going to happen. Okay, no, I don't buy that. All right, now, so the news is that the South Pole would be moving to the Indian Ocean, and that the North Pole would be moving to Siberia. Now, there are multiple theories about what's going to happen. That the Earth would shift, would wobble, some big catastrophe would happen, or we would virtually not notice it that much. And Penny is putting this forth about water coming up from the oceans, islands, and yeah, there's some thinking about that. All right, yeah, she's talking about a shift. She's talking about the micronova, but that's way in the future. And I assure you, as a fundamentalist Christian, I believe God is in charge. So I just don't buy into these things. I'm just bringing this out because Dr. William Mount, also a Christian, is bringing out some new information about the sun, which I believe is going to be maybe surprising for you. Okay. So, now, the cabal, yes, is using some of this science information to put out and say this or that. And one thing that's coming up, some predictions have been put forth for catastrophe in April or May. Now, Cliff High, his WebBot data was May 19 to 27, high emotion. I believe we're going to see the return of our elected president then. All right, now, Suspicious Observers is a science-based program, independent thinker, talking about on April 11, yeah, we did have a solar filament erupt from the sun, and it appears to be headed toward Earth, but he believes it's just going to be a minor little blip. I'm just saying, if you're hearing doom and gloom, you know. Now, Paul Begley is coming out with this, that this sun has been erupting for the last few days, and there's no sunspot. So there's World News Report, April 11, a huge explosion on the sun is hurling a CME, but there's no sunspot responsible. I'm pointing this out. Yes, unusual things are happening on the sun. Yeah, that's coming out. Now, Suspicious Observers this morning is talking about Neptune, and on the Neptune, so on the south pole of Neptune, there's a hot spot, but all over the other planet, the temperature is going down. So we have one hot spot on Neptune, but the temperatures all over the planet are going down. So I believe we have multiple things going on cosmically. We know that Mike from around the world frequently is on Pastor Paul Begley's Thursday night program. We believe Mike works for a government agency such as NSA. Mike knows stuff. And for 7 or 8 years, he's been talking about cosmic waves coming in. Okay, so now Stephen Banoon with Israeli News Live a few weeks ago came out with his information from the Pentagon that Planet X is coming in. in September, it would be in our solar system, and by December, we would be feeling the effects. Well, I submit to you there's multiple things going on in space, and they're affecting the Earth. So, I just don't think we should believe doom and gloom reports at all. All right. Now, recently, I think that was on, Dr. William Mount reported on this, and also Mr. MBB333. I think he showed that. And that was something happening in Alaska, and you could see it coming down from the sky to the earth, and it did appear to be an object with a spiral positioning on it. Now, we know that these things impacting the earth from space can cause some debris to come in. Okay. Now, we have some information that the Vatican has held, Pentagon has held. Yeah, they just haven't released it yet about different things. Now, we had a mysterious, I reported on this a few days ago, and Florida McKee has also brought this out. It was about a few days ago, there was a crash at Fort Stewart in Georgia, and they had one medic pilot killed, and it's under criminal investigation. Well, Florida is bringing this out, which is very strange. Supposedly, there were 2 helicopters that took off at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They only found 1 pilot dead, none for the second helicopter. How did they start up without alerting the other people? And supposedly everyone else was asleep. It's mysterious, and I reported on it. But Florida is bringing this out too. So, yeah, we have strange things going on. Yeah, that's true. Now, Dr. William Mount, is bringing this out about the Azores Islands. In the last 2 weeks, there have been thousands of earthquakes there. I submit to you that things are happening on the earth as a result of the electromagnetic shield around the earth being weakened. Now, he's reporting, there's on scheduled flights on a global basis, about 1/3 are being canceled. Supposedly, they have personnel issues or other issues. I submit to you that there are dramatic changes taking place within the navigational satellite system because the electromagnetic shield around the earth is weakening, and we have incoming space things pressing on the earth. I submit to you that one of the reasons there are so many cancellations in the flights is because the navigational system is changing. All right. Now, this is new information, and I've heard it before, so I'm going to put it out because the way that we learn new information is, first of all, we have to have some kind of concept presented to us. We then tie it to things we've learned before. But if it's brand new information, we have to initially have a concept presented to us. So I'll present it. And Dr. William Mount is bringing this out. And I believe that Dr. Mount does act as a conduit for the release of official information from the White Hats. That the sun has a wormhole in the middle of it. And I've heard this from multiple sources for several years. It's actually a hub with portals for intergalactic travel all over the universe. All right. And that we're going to have an increase in CMEs coming in, energy released toward the earth, and that the sun is actually cold fusion, not hot. I've heard that from multiple sources. And then it heats up as it's from friction passing from the sun to the earth. Cold fusion. Now, we've been learning in the past few years that a lot of the information we've been learning has not been correct, and that you can almost flip it and get what is accurate. Should we stop learning? Absolutely not. We should intensify our efforts to learn new information, think about it. Fundamentalist Christians, well, we can ask God. He knows everything. Okay. So this concept of a cold sun, yes, I can get on board with that. And that it just heats up, coming propelled by millions of miles per hour solar wind. Friction heats it up, and it's warmed up when it gets to the earth. So, yeah. All right. But now, why is Dr. William Mount putting this out now? And why, when I look across what's happening, I hear sun, 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 sun. Okay. So, we got that going on. Now, a new source I've been looking at is Inspired. And they've had several programs on this week. Looking Glass. Now, Carrie Cassidy with Project Camelot came out years ago. She did the interview, I think, with Bill Wood about what is looking glass. She had a picture of it. And actually, it's like a quantum computer that can look forward and past, present, and future. Now, I first heard of this concept a few years ago from the late prophet John Paul Jackson. And he said that Jesus gave him this teaching that past, present, and future linear time only operates on the earth. And this is our training location. That once you're off of the earth, there's no past, present, and future. So it's a very difficult concept. I believe John Paul Jackson, and, I'm a fundamentalist Christian. We can always ask God, is this right? It's this concept of time, yeah. So it's a little difficult for us. So this looking glass was some type of device that would enable you to look in the past, the present, and the future. And at that time, also to demonstrate to John Paul Jackson, Jesus took him off of the earth and then back to a point on the earth, and where they landed was in the time of King David. And John Paul Jackson could describe it with the smells and what he saw. And he described David. This tells you that God was behind David. David was a guy about my size, 5'2", 120 pounds, red hair, had a little pointed beard. So, yeah. Who was it that helped him beat Goliath? That would have been God. Yeah. So now this is coming out about looking glass, and they can't get, and Gene Decode talked about this also. The cabal could not get past this date, 2045. And it simply means that we can, we're in charge of the reality that is accurate. Christians, humans. Recently, in my prayer time, I was talking about prophesy, and God gave me this download that we humans have the capability of prophesying the future. We know we're created in the image of God, and God thought, he spoke, and reality came to be. And we have that same capability. But the new part God gave me was we can prophesy and speak reality into, speak the real world into being. And we have that ability embedded in our DNA. Yeah. And then I had that Patriot subscriber who had a similar experience like Jaco and said, we were the only species created in the image of God. So now we can see why the deep state wants to wipe us out. Yeah. So I say, think, and the Bible instructs us, think good thoughts. And we can think it, then we can speak it. That's how God operates too. Speak it into being. So speak the good things that you want to see. And don't buy into all this doom and gloom stuff. All right, here's some information coming from Stephen Beforeitsnews and other sources. This is about a rumor of a situation to take place in New York City on April 18. And there have been multiple sources for this. And what's coming out now is what the plot was by the deep state. And they were going to use Malaysia Flight MH370. Now this happened in 2014. A Malaysian Flight 370 took off from Kuala Lumpur en route to Beijing and disappeared. And it had 239 passengers on it, including mostly scientists. Now, this new information is coming out from Stephen Beforeitsnews and ShariRaye and other sources that the plane set down in a shadow U.S. military CIA base in the Indian Ocean. So this is, here's India. India comes down. And right about here in the Indian Ocean is Maldives and Diego Garcia. So now it's believed that the MH370 plane was taken here and the people were offloaded and taken somewhere else. And the deep state was going to use this plane to load it up with an object and drop it on New York City, April 18 of 2022. That possibly was a plan, and ShariRaye's information is that it was going to be parked off of Maine. There was a small island there that had an abandoned U.S. military airstrip, and they were going to put the plane there and then use it to drop an object on New York City. Well, that plan has been thwarted, and we say thank you, Jesus. Absolutely. Okay, I'm beginning to think the more I cover news, all these catastrophes are every single day averted, and I believe God does that. So, yes, every morning we need to get up and say thank you, Jesus, for a new day. All right, so now we move on to look ahead. I have multiple sources: Benjamin Fulford, Jim Willie, ShariRaye, Judy Byington, Jean Decode, Cliff High, All right. Benjamin Fulford a few weeks ago was interviewed by David Nino Rodriquez. And what Benjamin Fulford brought out, now he was a Canadian, worked for Forbes for about 20 years in Japan. He's still based in Japan, has contacts with wealthy families all over the earth. So the Asian families all over the earth are not going to invest money in the U.S. until President Trump is back. That's what they see, because they believe that the Western countries have been taken over by some type of ultra religious and cult, they say. All right. And then Gene Decode had given this probability for President Trump returning in May as being 50% plus. So, and I think the Cliff High's webbots also are talking about May being a great time for something happening. All right. So Benjamin Fulford is saying that Russia and Saudi Arabia are both. Well, Russia is saying rubles are gold for oil and gas, and Saudi Arabia is also saying gold for oil and gas. Now, Benjamin Fulford believes in the new Nasara Jassara form of a new republic government for the U.S. will have a basket of gold and 30 commodities. So we'll see, because the current U.S. stock market is in the process of going down. It's being replaced with new technology. All right. And Benjamin is saying this, that we're seeing a change in the mainstream media, and I can attest to that because they're now currently talking about the laptop. And what does it show? I assure you they wouldn't be talking about the laptop unless soon there's going to be a change in our government. All right. And we know that prophetic pastor Tim Sheets had this word from the Lord, God's calendar, February 6th through all of March. Change every day on the calendar. Now, ShariRaye is bringing out some information. She had some, her subscribers have questions. Okay. Under Nasara, people who are on Social Security, and I had one of my Patriot subscribers say, when is the retirement age? As far as I know, it's still 62. 62, and if you wait until you're 65, then you get full Social Security benefits, but you can get a minimum at this age. All right. So Sherry is saying those on Social Security, and this also applies to those who are on disability. I think that's SSI, vets, disability, like that. Okay. It's to increase. It's going to go up 3 times or to $5,000 per month. So at a minimum, all these benefits are to increase to $5,000 per month. Also, people who are retirement age are to receive also all of their money that's been made on their birth certificates, because somehow the deep state can get a birth certificate, put it on the stock market, and make money off of it. We don't know how that. It's crazy. Okay. And then all people at a certain age, young adults too, will receive all of the money they've paid into the IRS. The IRS is going away. Now, so Sherry is saying that we're on track for all of these great things to happen. And she's bringing this out. 72 in New York. Test positive. And she says that's a government, different levels of government, some state and some federal in New York that tested positive. And that's a symbol for arrest. And this includes Susan Collins. So that's going on. Now we have, thousands of people are going to a rally in Louisiana. No more mandates. Same thing, right, in New York. Right. And also in New York, she's saying that there are explosions going off in the manholes, but those are just underground areas being taken out by the white hats. Now, she's giving this warning: water. Don't drink the water. 2/3 of the U.S. public water supply is contaminated with uranium. The northwest and south areas are most at risk. So that's reassuring, yeah. We have to all have water filters. Okay, Nick Veniamin interviewed Michael Jaco. Michael is former Navy SEAL, worked for the CIA, while he was a Navy SEAL, had that meeting with the Archangel Michael because he was actually killed in a battle, but Archangel Michael came, pushed time back. The missile was coming in that was supposed to kill him, and Archangel Michael shielded him, and so yeah. So Michael Jaco comes out with some truth. All right. I was talking about the laptop and the new contained on it the new world order plans for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. Taking down humans. Yeah. And taking over all the resources of the world. That's going on. Now, Truth Seekers 88. This is Truth Seekers. It's all one word. 88. It's on Rumble. Well, I think he's also on Telegram and other locations. But Truth Seekers 88 is his location on Rumble. Mike Penny. And Mike had received this information. It came through the government of Wales. It was, we didn't mean to release it, but this information's been coming out. So I submit to you, it was an intentional release. That the Queen is dead. So we know that when there's a public coming forth that the Queen is dead, great things are going to be happening. And we say, bring it, Father. Okay. Also, we're hearing this on a program on Beforeitsnews. It's Showtime. That Special Forces, and I had also Real Raw News. Now, Real Raw News is accurate information. It's being put out by the military intel group. The information's accurate, but they're putting it out way past the actual time it happened. It's a form of disclosure. It's accurate. Dr. F was arrested shortly after he had an interview with Bloomberg, and saying there's going to be a resurgence of all the mandates. Well, he's been arrested. He's in Gitmo, and he's been, we believe, Gitmo. It could be at another location. He's been charged with treason and medical malpractice. Okay, And they're also reporting Loretta Lynch. She was an attorney general, I believe, during the Clinton era. So she's been arrested, and she's already been had a tribunal, and she's been sentenced to hang, treason, and other things. Okay, their Real Raw News is also reporting President Putin and Russia have freed 35,000 young humans from those underground areas in Ukraine. And we know Charlie Ward recently said that a Russian general said, someone asked the general, when is this war in Ukraine going to be over with? And he said, when all of the young humans have been rescued. So that's going on. Judy Byington is saying that, right, and also Benjamin Fulford and Jim Willie, a PhD economist living in Costa Rica, say the U.S. dollar is not accepted outside the U.S. And this would mean for international purposes, like on a SWIFT system or whatever, for individuals. I think it applies to governments trying to buy things or militaries like that, or big companies. All right. And she's saying that May 1, 210 nations went onto the gold standard. And that we'll have a new stock market with new technology. JFK Jr. has been our vice president for several years. We're operating under military law 11.4, which means showtime. And we say bring it. Now, Judy Byington is bringing this out. This is new information to me, that on April 11 in Cuba, the U.S. White Hats in the military and special forces went into Cuba, into Havana, Calzada de Diaz de Octubre, which is a route to the old Havana. So now, April 12, Cuba wakes up to martial law. And this is martial law under the alliance. So, I mean, the White Hats and the U.S. military would be involved, but other militaries also, including Cuba's. Yeah, they have part of their group in there. All right. So, ShariRaye and Judy Byington and other sources are reporting soon as Nasara Jassara, our Jubilee for debt cancellation, no IRS, a 17% flat tax on new items, food and medicine and other items, no tax. We're under constitutional law. We have a new government and a new top of our government. New phones, the Q phones, and prosperity, a wealth transfer. So we're looking forward to all of that. Now, I'll link for you a concert that was given by Kim Clement in Washington, D.C. Speak it forth, prophesy, freedom and cleansing for the United States of America. And that took place in 1996. It's exciting. And we can prophesy and bring reality in to being. That's embedded in our DNA according to God. Okay, short prayer. First, we'll do the cleansing prayer modeled by Jean Decode. We remove permission to be in us, on us, around us, on earth, off world, any dimension, any person, place, or thing not of God, any assemblage of fallen angels, AI, nanobot, another form of tech, any non-terrestrial species, spirit, thought form, operating system, genetic overlay, past, present, and future. Now, this prayer comes from multiple locations of the King James Bible. It's part of a new series God gave me, Names of God, based on the King James Version of Psalms 18. So this is one of 8. You are my rock. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul brought out that Jesus is our rock, and he's like the rock in the Old Testament in the book of Numbers that the Israelites could tap and get living water from. And Deuteronomy chapter 32, Moses said, the rock is strong and steadfast, our God, not moved or shaken. And his works are perfect. His ways are just. He is our faithful God who does no wrong. And in Psalms 18, my God is my rock. 2 Samuel 22, the Lord lives, and because of this we are blessed by salvation. Luke chapter 6, build your house upon the rock so it will stand. And we say, bless us, O Lord, to be steadfast and unshakable. And we say, thank you, Father, Son, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, and the Holy Spirit. And I say to my family and friends, remain steady out there, continue to pray. God is in charge, and he is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.